All right, guys, welcome to a number of channels: Integrated Preparedness, American Reversion, and Confederate America. You know who I am, but this man right next to me is Lanny with the Sons of Confederate Veterans. We're up here in Jamesport, Missouri. They have their Heritage Days going on, and I hope you can see us. I can see Lanny's reflection in my screen because the sun is beating down on us. So I'll do this as well as I can, keeping you all seeing us, and we're going to make it kind of quick because these guys are just flooded with people who are interested in their group. Yes. And if those of you who have read my books, you know that I have spent a lot of time trying to educate people on the truth of what they mistakenly, and you all were probably taught in school by teachers who didn't know any better, called the Civil War, which was not a civil war at all. If you've read my books, I've talked about the basic tenets of the Confederacy. I've tried to educate that. I've talked about Order Number 11, which many people don't know anything about. It was a horrendous time in Missouri and in our country. And it wasn't the only horrendous time. You know that my family came up from South Carolina and Georgia and Virginia, as did a lot of people after Sherman had his little trek across the South. And we ended up in Missouri. You know, there's little portions up here in northern Missouri that they refer to as Little Dixie, because there's populated so much by those who understood the truth of the South and the Confederacy. Now, I'm going to shut up because I got a man here who's going to tell you more about an organization that I think is worth your time. And if you feel like joining, you ought to find a chapter in your area. Yeah. Lanny, you want to tell a little bit about you all?
Yeah, I would like to say a few things. First of all, the word Civil War, we don't use that.
Right.
Up here we use the War for Southern Independence, right, much like the independence we had during our forefathers during the Revolutionary War. So it's a War for Southern Independence. That's
right.
what we refer to. I'm with the Sons of Confederate Veterans. We're a national organization, national historical organization. We're one of the oldest organizations in America with a lineage of true ancestors. We're in all the states. We're in Europe, in Australia. So we have lots of different camps. We call them camps, you know. So anyway, our camp here in Gallatin, Missouri, Sergeant John Craven's camp, number 2276. And we are out here today fundraising, and we're buying grave markers. We take our funds and our money and buy grave markers with us. So that's what we're out here doing today. You mentioned Missouri during the war. Missouri, when you see the old battle flag here, Missouri is a 12 star on that flag. And we earned that by heavy blood. Kentucky came in on the 13th. We came in November of 1861. Now, Missouri ranked number 3 in combat battles, only surpassed by Virginia and Tennessee. Now, Missouri didn't have huge battles, 10 to 20,000 men at a time. We had groups of maybe 50 men or 100 men at a time. And Missouri did rank number 3 in combat battles. And Missouri was really, like you said, the border state, so we actually started fighting this war probably in 1855 or quicker.
That's right.
But life was very cheap in Missouri back then. It was just a terrible time in Missouri. The plundering, the burning, the looting, the murders, the rapes coming in from Kansas, and jayhawkers and redleggers. You can study that out if you want to research it. It's all there.
Excuse me, I interrupt for just a second. I don't want to offend all you KU fans of the Jayhawkers, but I've said this so many times before. It is the only team, the only mascot named after terrorists. All right, now I'll give it back to you all.
That's true. That's true. You know, it's all there in history. You just need to study it. It's the internet's a beautiful thing anymore because we can look up, we can study, go to the Library of Congress, and all the data is there. And I encourage you to read that and study that out. So if you got any questions, maybe I can still me just rattling on.
Well, I tell you what, I wanted to give you the chance to say anything you want to. Right. I've spouted off so much to these folks; they already know what I think. But I think that this is an organization, and I'll let you wrap up with however much you want to go. But I think this is an organization that is worth joining if you have an interest. And I also want to say, before I hand it back to Lanny, if you see behind us the flags over there. Now, so many people see this battle flag, which was the battle flag of the Army in Northern Virginia. Right. Okay, so many people think that's the Confederate flag. No, it wasn't. The Confederate flag went through several iterations for different reasons, and I won't go into the details of those, but there were reasons for each iteration of them. And if you want to talk about the foundational principles of America. It was the Southerners and the Confederacy that stood for those foundational principles. Well,
States' rights, the constitutional
that's
rights.
exactly right. Now I'll shut up again, Lanny. You just
You
bring
mentioned
it.
now you tripped me a little bit
All
on
right.
the flag. You'll see after the first flag here, you see the first national flag,
Yeah.
the second national flag, and the third national flag. The first national flag,
See if we get you in there.
the first national flag flew for a year or two, I think, till 1862. When it hung limp in battle, it looked like the American flag.
Right.
So they decided to go to the second flag, which is called the stainless banner. That flew over Stonewall Jackson's coffin the first time it ever flew. And during the battle, when the smoke and the confusion and everything, if that flag hung limp, they thought maybe it was a surrender flag. But at the very end, they put the third flag, was called the stainless banner, or the blood-stained banner, and they had a sash on the side of the end of it there. And that was given about 1865. It wasn't very used very much because the war was almost over. But that's the first three flags. This Confederate flag here, battle flag, never did fly over Richmond.
Okay.
Those three flags flew over the state capital in Richmond. So it's a little bit of history about the flags.
Man, I tell you, Lanny, I can't thank you enough. Again, you guys look this organization up, and if you feel led to, you join them. Yeah.
One thing, real quick.
Yeah.
They always say the war is over slavery. That's the first thing. It's one sentence and it's over with.
Right.
It's very complicated, very in depth.
Yeah.
The war fought over secession.
Right.
We must bring these back into the Union. That's what Lincoln said.
Right.
Lincoln said, if they don't come back in the Union, who's going to pay for the government?
Right. And I'll stop on top of that and give you guys a double dip. You've heard me say this before if you've been with or if you've read my books. That secession of the states was totally constitutional.
Yes.
And Jefferson Davis lays that beautifully down in his book, A History of the Confederate Government. And as state after state seceded, and it was all of it, it was like what's going on today. The one group of people thought that they could put their desires and their will over another group of people. The North, and people also don't realize that I've talked about this before. Nobody talks about all the slaves in the southern states. Now I'll slip this in. Did you know that the figures show us that about 3 to 5% of whites in the South owned slaves? Did you also know that 25% of free blacks owned slaves?
Yes.
That's a surprise many people don't know. And what I have told my black friends, and it really changed their ideas, that the Emancipation Proclamation, people think that freed the slaves. No, it didn't. It was a strategic move on the part of Lincoln to try to cause disarray in the South.
A war measure.
That's right. He said that I emancipate all blacks in the South, trying to get them to leave and to abandon and cause havoc in the South. You know what he didn't do? He didn't free the slaves in the North, and he didn't free the slaves in any area that wasn't in open rebellion against the Union.
Which he had control over.
That's right. That means Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, and the southern part of Louisiana. Okay, y'all didn't know that, a lot of you did it. So he didn't free the slaves that he could have. How about that for a little history of people,
exactly right? That's exactly right.
These people, there's so many that don't know this, isn't there, Lane?
That's true. It's all there, but you got to take the time to study and read a little bit.
Right.
Just study a little bit, because we're being indoctrinated, paying big money to go to colleges and schools to be indoctrinated against the Southern college.
You know, guys, we're looking towards what the future of our country is going to be, and sometimes, in order to see the right future, we have to look to the past.
Exactly.
This struggle is not over, because everybody who has a heart that yearns for freedom and a desire for personal and state sovereignty and the freedom,
love of God and country and the Constitution,
and what our founders tried to give us.
Exactly.
Lanny, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you all have a good day.
Study and read your history.
That's right. Don't believe what those teachers tell you unless you happen to have a good one.
Yeah.
See you later. Bye-bye.